The Big 12 Media Days are tomorrow, and for a team that's got a lot of questions surrounding it at this point in the season, this is the perfect opportunity for Iowa State to clear the air to set the record straight. I've got a few questions that I need to have asked, and I need the answers to. We're talking about them today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're going to be breaking down some questions that I think should be asked tomorrow at Big 12 Media Days, and what I think maybe that those questions could lead to answers, what those answers would mean for Iowa State football. It's going to be an exciting time tomorrow, but let's kind of preview that for now. Then we're going to talk about some Tamin Lipsey kind of news breakdown and what he means to this basketball team in the second segment. And then finally, there were some new rankings, some new predictions that came out around Iowa State football, and they're actually good. They are very good. So I'm going to talk about those in the third segment. Can't wait to get that far. But of course, first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Now, let's dive into this Big 12 Media Days deal. Iowa State will be on the stand, if you will, or at least be in front of the microphone, behind the microphone. How do you want to say it there? Maybe in front of the camera, behind the microphone. Tomorrow, Tuesday, that'd be the 8th of July. This is going to be a really cool insight opportunity for us Cyclone fans to hear more of what's been going on, throughout just post spring ball through the summer so far as we go into fall camp. There are going to be 5 student athletes and Matt Campbell at Media Days. Rocco Beck, Tyler Miller, offensive lineman, Dominique Orange, Big Citrus, the defensive lineman, Jeremiah Cooper, and Jontez Williams, both from the secondary. And then, of course, like I said, Matt Campbell, the head coach there. So I wrote out some questions. I will not be making the trip down there, unfortunately, but maybe next year. Who knows? So if anyone's out there, it's like, oh, I was looking for some questions for Iowa State, feel free to take these because I would like the answers to these. Now, so some of these I'm sure will get asked regardless, because I think that a lot of people have these questions, but some of them maybe not, And so when you're looking forward to the Big 12 Media Days that are coming up, and you're kind of like, oh, are they going to ask? Are they going to ask? These are some questions that I have. If you have better questions, drop them in the comments down below or send them to me at Nick_Marv on Twitter, and I'll see what I can do to get those in circulation. All right, let's get started with QB Rocco Beck. Excuse me. I think the easiest question to ask here, this is a pure gimme. How's the chemistry with the new wide receivers going? Yeah, it's really quite simple, pretty straightforward. Really opens up the door to just kind of let him talk about the new receivers that he's been throwing to. Obviously, Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend, kind of the two that a lot of people are looking at. There are some other names in that wide receiver room that I would like to know how it's going, but I don't think that it's as pertinent of a question as the chemistry with the two new wide receivers. And then in this same vein, I also was kind of curious about his relationship with Xavier Townsend, a guy that we know Rocco has had a previous kind of quote-unquote relationship with, just knows the guy. And so I'm curious to see, what's that been like? Has it made things easier? Has it made things maybe a little bit more difficult? I can't imagine it would make things more difficult, but where does that relationship sit? And then, of course, since we don't have any actual wide receivers there, we kind of have to ask Rocco some wide receiver questions as well. I was thinking maybe something along the lines of like, how will Xavier Townsend's utility, you can't really ask how will it be used this upcoming season, but maybe how will Iowa State's offense benefit from Xavier Townsend's offensive utility. We talked about, I guess I talked about just how, you put him in the slot, put him in the backfield, put him out at the X or the Z or whatever, out wide. The guy's got speed, all right? And I do think Iowa State can utilize his talents quite a bit. So we'll see what Rocco thinks on that, or at least hopefully someone asks that. And then finally, this is a question that I thought was maybe not going to be asked. And is it because it's a bad question, or is it because just not very many people are going to think about it? I don't know. Nonetheless, the question that I was wondering is, Does he plan to use his legs as much or less than last year, this year? That's a terrible way of asking it. There's a reason. I have the microphone down there. Is he going to use his legs more or less than last year? Is he given clearance to use those legs as much as last year? Some quarterbacks are kind of told, hey, we're not really running because there is a lot of, I guess it's risky, right? There's a lot of apprehension around letting your quarterback put the game in his own hands. Remember when Josh Allen was kind of coming onto the scene in the NFL? It was that conversation of like, great, this is awesome, but like, how long can you do this for? How long can we do this before we get injured, before we get hurt, before this starts to affect play in other areas of the game? Because you're our guy. Same thing with Rocco. Like, you're our dude. How risky is Iowa State willing to let him be, essentially? Are they willing to say, you know what, full reins, this is your team, this is your offense, go out there, make the plays that you see fit? Or are they kind of saying, hey, maybe we slow down on the runs a little bit? Or is in Rocco's head, maybe he like, all right, I really liked what I saw running last year. Maybe I can start to incorporate that into my game a little bit more this season. Those are the kind of questions that I had for Rocco. Moving on to Tyler Miller here at the offensive line position. Really, the biggest thing that I was wondering is, where is the offensive line as a unit? Okay. Now there's going to be questions of, how's the offensive line doing with this and this and this. The biggest thing for me is the chemistry, because offensive line is very much unit driven. You might have the 5 best linemen out on the field, but they might not be the best offensive line for that team. Those 5 best linemen might just not work that great together, right? They might actually be better off if you put in 1 or 2 guys that aren't technically at the top as far as skill goes, but they understand what each other are doing more, and they can, okay, he's going to be here, I got to be here. If this is a situation, we've got this guy going there, and this is our block scheme. All right, if he's going to take that gap, I've got this one here, versus technically sound guys that just aren't all on the same page. So I want to know about the chemistry at the offensive line. Dominique Orange, big citrus, a big question mark, I feel like, for this team. Wasn't really certain whether or not he'd be coming back to Iowa State, but he said, you know what, I'm coming back. I got more to prove. I left some on the table, yada, yada, yada. I want to know, how has the offseason gone in terms of conditioning and getting ready to be competitive for 60 plays for you, Mr. Dominique Orange? Eli Rashid was the one talking about that 60 play mark. Dom was a guy that, when he was out there and he was on, one of the best players out there, but he just didn't play that many plays like at full speed. And that's something that even he talked about. Like, I need to get that up a little bit. So I would like to know kind of where he's at there. And now there's really 2 aspects to every player, mental and physical. And he mentioned his mindset. So I want to know what's changed in the mindset from last season. How are we feeling mentally ahead of this year? Are things maybe feeling a little bit smoother? We're not worried so much mentally on what's going on. Now we can just mentally mindset type of deal towards the game as a whole, if that makes sense. I think I would like to know, where's he at there? You got another year under your belt, a lot more experiences. What does that look like? And then for the defensive backs, the secondary here, Jeremiah Cooper. I'd like to know, how does this relatively young group plan to handle the ups and downs of a season? Because last season had a lot of ups. It was a really awesome season, 11 wins at the end of the year. But even in that, lots of ups and downs, injuries, bad plays. You could even narrow it down to just singular plays, ups and downs wise. How can a younger group handle that? Because this is not the most, veteran, battle-tested group probably in college football. And then Jontez Williams, he's kind of a leader for this group, or at least he's being depicted as one by a lot of people. And so I'm going to ask him a question. Yeah, you say, how's a group as a whole, yada, yada, yada. But I'm curious, how is Benny Ngoye handling the transition? Somebody that is essentially, a leader kind of overseeing the group would know, how is Benny Ngoye handling this? A guy that I think could be a real sleeper in the secondary. Forgot to mention that last Farmington Friday, but I do think that he could be a real stud for this unit. And we'll see how it pans out. Is it like DP? Maybe. Huh? Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We're only at media days. We've got some time before the season. Speaking of before the season, boy, we are really getting out ahead of ourselves here talking about basketball, but that is coming up right after this. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's a game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands, and that's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time does make buying tickets fast and simple, and prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. They've got incredible last minute deal selection, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Seat views right in the app before you buy, knowing right exactly what you're going to see before you make that purchase. That is my favorite feature by far. I have to see it with my own eyes before I can do the actual click. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So basketball is further away than football. I think we can all agree on that. That seems like a pretty self-explanatory, calendar year assumption to make. I think it's actually the correct assumption, even, which is wild. Yes, you are here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we've got to be talking about all the major sports. Okay, and basketball is one of those. Now, Tamin Lipsey going into his senior season, kind of like the hometown hero, if you will. Obviously comes from Ames, but almost like a fan favorite at the same time. The thing about Tamin Lipsey, and we will get into kind of this conversation here in a second, but I think a lot of the reason that people love Tamin Lipsey is his heart, his effort that he puts out there on the floor. It's constant. I mean, it's in what we're going to talk about here. It reminds me of like a hockey player. It's just, nothing matters besides the game, giving my all to the game, playing my hardest for this team. That's what Tamin Lipsey's all about. And it's a guy that we've talked about, all through the season in the way, I guess, from the perspective of the box score is not how well Tamin Lipsey played. He might have 4 points and like 3 steals, but every single play that Tamin makes is putting impact on the game. He's not out there just kind of trotting around, putting up a few things for the box score, going home. No, it's 100% effort all the time, constantly making an impact on the game. And so much so that Otzelberger has termed them Tamin plays. Like he's got a whole type of play named after him. And so when, we're coming up on his senior season here, I think it's worth looking into Tamin just a little bit here, at least, for a couple minutes. We do have other things to talk about, obviously. Football coming up. I believe we're under 50 days now to Farmageddon. So very exciting time. I believe 50 days was the 4th of July. So hopefully you had a good 4th of July and enjoyed some fireworks, maybe some grill and whatever. It was good. It was a good weekend, but 50 days now. And so there are other things to talk about, but I would like to at least mention, kind of the guy, kind of the heartbeat of this Iowa State basketball team. Now, one of the things, you want to talk about heartbeat, let's go medical. One of the things that a lot of people were talking about last season was Tamin Lipsey's health. Now, the health of Iowa State was not great last season. Obviously, the injury to Momcilovic kind of derailed the season in a way, in some ways. And then Curtis at the end of the year, and most notably Keyshawn, the team wasn't healthy by any stretch of the means. Now, Tamin Lipsey was a guy that was dealing with some stuff, but it was kind of oddly like oh, yeah, and this also is happening. Like, it was never a conversation of this is going to be a major impact. The reason I think that that's the case isn't because Tamin wasn't making an impact on the game, right? If you've got a guy who's 11th in rotation who has a sprained thumb, you're like, well, yeah, he does have a sprained thumb. It's on the injury report, but it's not as big as LeBron with his broken femur. Like, yeah, obviously depth is going to matter. Tamin was out there making big plays, dealing with, shoulder, groin, thumb, out the wazoo. This kid was just beat up, like I said, like a hockey player, and went out there every night and gave it his all. And so I think the reason that there was this kind of idea of like, oh, it's also, yeah, Tamin is also hurt, but, we'll be fine. It didn't matter. It wasn't like a thing that Tamin was going to let affect him. He was out there literally fighting tooth and nail for every possession, regardless of the condition that his body was in. And it was electric. And I think that that's what sets him apart from any basketball player ever. but also set Iowa State apart in some aspects last season as well. Now, talking about kind of his injuries this offseason, he said, quote, just took some time to let my body heal on its own. I didn't really do much. And after that, I got back in with Vic, the head athletic trainer for Iowa State, and just focused on strengthening my groin. It was obviously bothering me late in the season, and their thumb was basically half the season, but it got better throughout the year, and I feel like it's good. They said no surgery or anything. So that's a good spot to be in. We can take some time this offseason, really kind of heal up, get back to 100%. Kind of bouncing back and forth here. Football, Matt Campbell talking about this is maybe one of the healthiest that the group's been at. One of the most healthy states that the football team has been in going into this season. Now that was back at spring ball. Things do happen between spring ball and now, and obviously during fall camp. Like it's going thing. I hope not, but like it is a physical sport and it is a very physically taxing situation. Like it's difficult now. That was a while ago, and things may have changed, but at least at that point in the season, he was like, this is one of the most kind of ready groups we've had as far as from a physical injury standpoint, which is always super good news. Basketball, same thing applies. This is going into the season not at 100%, never good. And so getting some time to relax, obviously the surgery situation also very good there for Lipsy. You want to try to avoid that as much as possible. That's where you want to be. So shoulder surgery last off season, groin and thumb this year. Like this is, you need the time. The body needs time to heal. There are going to be things that maybe accelerate that healing process, but I don't know how many of them are actually usable in the NCAA. I think you kind of got to toe that line a little bit there and be safe. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying that I think for the body to heal correctly, it needs time. That's all I'm saying by that comment. I don't want that to get misconstrued. He's talking about having the ball here. Lipsy said that I had the ball a lot. Obviously, it was tough also being a freshman, having to handle the ball and bring it up the court and all of that. But I feel like I play my best when I can sort of run the team and be a quarterback out there for us. I'm excited for that. So obviously reminiscing a little bit, talking about being a freshman. But that's a position that I think Tamin Lipsy kind of can excel in. That field general is where he can be his strongest, especially when you look at the box score not quite translating with those numbers. Well, a quarterback that is, let's just play the hypothetical game here. Okay. If you got a quarterback out there, he touches the ball every play. Let's say they don't pass it one time. I believe Mac Jones threw 3 passes back in 23 to beat the Bills. 22 maybe. It was one of Mac Jones' first seasons. He only threw like 3 times. It was really cold, really windy, and they still beat the Bills, who are a very good team. That is not going to show up in the box score. It's just not. It's going to be like, oh, okay, well, I guess, this quarterback didn't play well. Well, he's out there making the reads. What's the defense in? Can we switch this around? Are we switching from power to stretch? Are we going to crash down on the inside into the A gaps in this situation? If we're running the ball every play, it's still the quarterback making the calls on what's the snap count, what's the what are we drawing him off sides? Are we quick going here? He's the one conducting the game, and I don't need to lay it out too black and white for you there. I think you know what I'm talking about. So Tamin Lipsy, being that field general, being that kind of quarterback on the floor, it's a great role for him to be in. It doesn't really translate to the box score, but for him to be able to do that makes a big impact on the team. All right, let's just kind of leave it there, because really what we're talking about is Tamin Lipsy seems to be healthy, or at least is getting there. And that's good news for the Iowa State team, because he's the one that makes this team go. He is the heartbeat. Obviously, like I said, not the most points scored, not the most blocks, not the most steals, but the guy who brings the effort every night. And if he's not bringing the effort, the rest of the team doesn't feel it and they don't perform as well, at least in my opinion. That's just how I see it. Am I crazy for that? I don't know. You let me know. Comments down below or at Nick_Marv on Twitter. We're going to pivot back to football now. Turn the heat up a little bit. The things being the heat. We're going to turn the heat up here in just a second as we break down a positive prediction for Iowa State. So the Pro Football Network is Not something I have dove into a lot in the past, but it's something I'm diving into now because they have Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. Woo! You're here with Locked On Cyclones, for our Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, we had to talk about this because whenever Iowa State is predicted to do well, that's something we're going to talk about. Iowa State not generally predicted to be at the top of the Big 12. I think especially recently, there's been this kind of notion that what Iowa State has accomplished in the years that they are very successful, it's one-off. This is not a sustained, kind of success model. It's just Iowa State for you. And I don't love that. I can see why this year maybe there would be some skepticism, obviously, with the loss of Higgins and Knoll. But Rocco's got another year under his belt. I'm not going to dive into all the reasons because we've done this 1,000 times. But I can see the idea behind the thought process of, well, Iowa State's going to need to prove it. Like, yeah, I mean, that is true, but we do have Carson Hansen. We're not going to go there. Point being, the Pro Football Network put their belief in the Cyclones, and that's awesome. Now, you're gonna hear this, and I want you to take this little piece of knowledge and then think about it, okay? Because I do think this is relatively important. They have Iowa State facing off against Utah in the Big 12 championship. I don't know about Utah. It's not a team that I've had on my radar this offseason, obviously talking about kind of the top teams. There's if you're watching on YouTube, I'm putting up the preseason poll here that the Locked On podcast, the Big 12 Network did. Where is Utah here? They're sitting at 8. I don't know if that's necessarily the most impressive position, but it is the Big 12, and it's a league that has a lot of parity, a lot of turnover year to year. So, I am very bolsterous, I think is maybe the term, on, Arizona State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Baylor, Iowa State. Not so much on BYU anymore. TCU definitely in that conversation, but that's kind of where I draw my line. I did not have Utah in that championship caliber team kind of conversation. So take that how you will. That's just where they have them. Where they have, I guess, these teams in the Big 12. And the losses that they gave to Iowa State were very interesting. I was shocked to see this. They have Iowa State making the Big 12 championship in 8-4 fashion. I know. They lose to K-State, Colorado, and BYU, and then they're out of conference, probably Iowa. So, the out of conference loss doesn't necessarily affect the Big 12 championship appearance. Obviously, that's more of the 12-team playoff at the end of the year. That's more really that implication there. And of course, we care about it because it's the Cyhawk. If that's the game we're going to lose. Remember, the Kansas State game, week 0 in Dublin, Ireland, a conference game. Remember that. That is not a non-conference game to start off the year. Iowa State starting off in a red-hot skillet. You got to go 0 to 100 really quickly. Kansas State, one of the best teams in the Big 12, Farmageddon, overseas, conference game, week 0. I mean, it's coming quick. Like I said, less than 50 days, all of a sudden, Iowa State's, I don't want to say on the chopping block, but you got to show your best stuff here a little bit. This is not a ramp-up period. So that game is going to be big. Then Colorado and BYU, 2 more losses for Iowa State there. Those are games that I had circled. I don't know about the BYU one so much anymore. We'll have to see how BYU handles the new quarterback position, who's there, how are they doing. But BYU is still a very good team. And Colorado, a team that, when you look at the schedule, it doesn't make sense to say that that's a 100% win. But I trust Iowa State to win that game. So, 8-4, like I said that previously, I've said I think that's their floor on the year. I don't think that they go much worse than 8-4. And if this is the way that it plays out, I'm okay with that because that means you beat an Arizona State in there based on those losses. Who do they beat? Well, Arizona State's in that conversation, right? And Iowa State has a very tough 3-game stretch in there with, I believe, Arizona State and BYU are back-to-back. I'm okay with Iowa State beating Arizona State, I guess, if you lose to Colorado. Like, if that's the trade-off, I'd probably take that. 8-4, though, it is the floor. It is the floor. And for them to make the championship game in that way, that's exciting. I don't know if I would be thrilled with 8-4. I think probably rather have 10 or 11 wins. And I do think that Iowa State, under this projection, can absolutely do that. I don't know why that popped up. Excuse me, YouTubers. I think that the Iowa game, that's very much a winnable game. We'll see exactly how Iowa plays out, and I'd like to speak with Trent Condon about that Iowa team here at some point, because that's a game that I think everyone in the state of Iowa has been looking forward to for a long, long time, probably since the clock hit zero last year. To be honest, that's the way I look at it, at least. And I think that's a game that Iowa State can win. I think Iowa's probably struggling in a few areas, and Iowa State isn't. And it's obviously in Jack Trice, which on paper gives Iowa State the edge, but maybe not so much in reality. Nonetheless, I think that's a game Iowa State can win. I think the Colorado game Iowa State can win. And then maybe they beat BYU, but they lose a different game. Maybe it's Arizona State, whatever the case is. I think that 10 wins. I think at 10 wins, Iowa State makes the Big 12 championship game. I think that's a given to me. But we'll see how the rest of the conference responds, because maybe Arizona State has 11, and maybe Baylor or TCU or whoever has 10 wins, but maybe Iowa State loses to TCU and doesn't have the head-to-head, whatever the case is. It's a Big 12. It's going to get completely chaotic. So this projection, very cool from Pro Football Network. I'm not going to dive into it game by game for every team in the conference, because I at the end of the day, it is just a projection. I saw some of you guys saying that who cares about the preseason rankings? It's just rankings. Look what Arizona State did last year. I agree completely. I mean, it is just kind of a fun little, let's see what the public perception is of Iowa State. That's the way I looked at it moreover than as an actual measure of where is Iowa State, going to finish. It's more so, what is the perception of Iowa State? And I think that this perception of Iowa State from Pro Football Network is very promising, just as far as, it's baby steps, right? We're 5 years ago, 7 years ago, because 5 years ago probably would have been right around that Big 12 championship. I'm not doing the math in my head, but the years get weird the way that it plays over through the new year. Anyway, I don't know if you'd be putting Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. I don't think that's the case. And now there are projections of Iowa State being in the Big 12 championship, which is awesome. I mean, that's just showing the sustained success of Matt Campbell. Obviously, the trust in the big players for Iowa State, Rocco being one of those, Carson Hansen being one of those, Jonathan Williams, Dom Orange, mostly the guys that are going to Big 12 Media Days tomorrow. Can't wait to see what they have to say there. But this is really cool. I think this is super exciting. I'll be interested to see if Utah sneaks in there. I'm not quite sure what their schedule looks like. I don't have it pulled up at this very moment. Maybe we can do that later, or I'll put it out on Twitter. But for Utah to get there, that's an interesting one. I don't think I have them in that same conversation. So take the prediction how you will, I suppose. But nonetheless, Iowa State 8-4 Big 12 championship appearance from Pro Football Network. I think that's really cool. Really, really neat little shout out from them there. I'm guessing they're probably closer to 9 or 10 wins, still making the championship, but nonetheless, a few more wins. Maybe that's just me, though. What do you think? How many wins? And are they making the championship game? Let me know down below, or at Nick_Marv on Twitter. Hope you guys had the best 4th of July weekend of all time. Get ready, because tomorrow is Big 12 Media Days, and that's going to be electric. That is going to be super awesome. All right. We're going to cover that on Wednesday when I can. And until next time, Cyclone fans, between then and now, sayonara.